Sable Reach had not seen a sunrise in 400 years, and had long ago stopped pretending it wanted one. The station hung in the shadowside orbit of a dead gas giant named Osric, a bruise-colored world that swallowed light and gave nothing back. The result was a city of 11 stacked rings that lived permanently in a kind of held breath, lamplit, humid, tired, endlessly awake. The condensers on the upper deck sweated, and the sweat fell through the grating in a thin, warm chemical drizzle, so that on Ring 6, where Emil Torres worked, it was always raining a little and never enough to wash anything clean. The station kept a day cycle out of habit, and nobody obeyed it. Sable Reach was a transfer node, a place where cargo and crews and debts changed hands, and business happened whenever the ships happened, which was always. So the concourses never really emptied. They just thinned, the way a crowd thins around something it does not want to touch. Emil worked the graveyard at a noodle-and-tea counter called Marisol's, 8 stools bolted to the deck, a burner that ran too hot on one side, and a hand-lettered sign that promised broth and mercy, 24 HOURS. Marisol herself had been dead 6 years. The sign stayed. Emil had been told on his first shift that changing it would be considered a hostile act. He was 19. With black hair he cut himself and cut badly, and the specific permanent tiredness of a person who sleeps in 4-hour shards. He wiped the counter. He restocked the tea. He watched the concourse the way you watch water, not for anything in particular, just because it moved. At 04:10, the concourse stopped moving. He noticed it before he understood it. The 3 dockhands at the far end of the strip, who had been arguing loudly about a bet, went quiet mid-sentence. Somewhere above, on the mezzanine, a shop grill came rattling down fast and hard, the way grills come down when a shopkeeper is not being careful, only quick. Then Emil felt it in his teeth. That was the only way he could describe it afterward, and he described it many times and never got it right. It began in the molars. A low note, so low it was not really a sound, a pressure that came up through the deck plates and through the soles of his boots and settled behind his sternum like a hand closing. His heart, which had been doing nothing in particular, took off running without asking him. Every hair on his arms lifted. And his body, which he had always thought of as basically his, turned into a stranger with an opinion. It wanted out. It wanted out so badly that his hands had already put down the rag and gripped the counter's edge, and his knees had already bent a half-degree toward the service gap behind him, and his throat had already made a small, ridiculous sound, and none of it had been his idea. There was a voice in him that was not words, that was older than words, and it was screaming a single syllable over and over, and the syllable was go. Emil looked up. She came down the concourse alone, because there was no other way for her to come. She was very tall, over 2.5 meters, he'd learn later, though at the time she was simply too big for the corridor asterisk. Her limbs had one joint more than they should have, which made her walk strange and made the strangeness beautiful, a long fluid unfolding, like watching a ribbon decide to be a person. Plates of something between chitin and stone covered her, dark as wet slate, seamed with faint gray lines where the plating met. Along her skull and down her spine ran a crest of quills, laid flat. Her hands had 4 fingers, each ending in a curve that was not quite a claw and was not quite not one. Her eyes were amber, lampglass amber, lit from inside, the least frightening thing about her, though he only knew that later. She wore a hull walker's undersuit, gray, patched at the elbows, and carried a mesh bag with a broken strap, and she walked down the middle of the concourse because the middle of the concourse was empty, and the middle of the concourse was empty because she was walking down it. The dockhands went into a doorway, not casually. They went the way people go into doorways during shellfire. She did not look at them. Emil got the sense that she had stopped looking at people a long time ago, the way you stop looking at a wound. She came to the counter. The note got louder as she came, or not louder, asterisk closer asterisk. It filled the space under the counter and behind his eyes. Emil's vision did the thing it does when you stand up too fast. His hands, gripping the counter's edge, had gone white at the knuckles. His mouth had dried out completely, all at once, like a valve had shut. Go asterisk, said the thing in him. Go, 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 go. He did not go. He did not go for a reason so small and so stupid that he could not have defended it under questioning, which is the only kind of reason that ever holds under pressure. She had stopped at his counter, and she was a customer, and Marisol's was open, and it said so on the sign. She looked at the menu board above his head. It took her a long moment. Emil understood, with a clarity that had no business being in his head at that moment, that she was giving him time, that she had stopped a full arm's length back from the counter, farther than any customer stood, and had put her hands behind her back, and was reading a menu she had almost certainly memorized, all to give him the seconds she assumed he would need to get out. She was waiting for him to run. She was politely waiting for him to run, so she could get her food after he'd gone. Emil Tors, 19 years old, shaking so hard that his belt buckle was making a small sound against the counter, said, "Evening, what can I get you?" The amber eyes came down. The note in his teeth spiked so hard that his eyes watered and his vision went grainy at the edges, and for one full second he was not certain he would stay upright. He clamped both hands on the counter and locked his elbows and stood there like a man in a high wind. She said nothing. Her voice, when it finally came, was doubled. That was the only way he could think of it. There was a voice, and under the voice there was a second voice, a lower one, and they moved together, and where they touched they made a third thing that was not exactly sound. "You should go," she said. "I'm working," Emil said. He heard himself say it. He was distantly proud of the fact that only one word of it wobbled. "You are frightened." "Yeah," he agreed. His teeth were chattering. He pressed his tongue against them to stop it, and it didn't stop. "Sorry, that's not about you. I mean, it is asterisk about you, obviously, but it's not." He gave up. "What can I get you?" The Vaskir woman stood in the rain of the condensers with a broken mesh bag in her hand, and looked at a human boy who was visibly, comprehensively terrified, and was not, for some reason, leaving. "Ginger tea," she said at last. "Large, and the salt broth. No noodles, please." "No noodles. I cannot chew them." "Huh," said Emil, and turned to the burner and knocked over the ladle and picked it up, and knocked it over again. It took him 4 minutes. It was the worst 4 minutes of his life to date. He could feel her behind him the entire time, that low note pressing against the back of his skull, and every animal thing in him was howling that he had turned his back on it, on asterisk or asterisk, on the shape in the dark, and each time he reached for something his hand overshot it. He burned the edge of his left wrist on the pot rim. He didn't notice until the next day. The tea sloshed. He set it down and half of it was in the saucer. He looked at it mortified. "Sorry," he said, "hang on." He made a second one. It also sloshed. He set that down too. "Okay," he said, "so the first one's free." There was a silence. And then the Vaskir woman made a sound he did not recognize and would not correctly identify for another 11 days, when he heard it again and finally understood that it was laughter, a short doubled click, like 2 stones tapped together underwater. She put credits on the counter, not into his hand. On the counter, and then she withdrew her hand, and then she waited, and Emil understood that too, understood it in his chest before his brain caught up. She has learned not to hand things to people. She has learned that the handoff is where they flinch, and the flinch is where it gets ugly. And so at some point in her life she stopped doing it, and now she puts money down and steps back like she is leaving an offering. He took the credits, he counted them. He put 4 back on the counter and slid them toward her. "You overpaid." She looked at the 4 credits for what felt like a long time. "Keep it," she said. "Nope," said Emil. "Marisol's a stickler." Another silence. The note in his teeth had not gone away. It never went away the whole time she was there. It was just that somewhere in the last 3 minutes his body had gotten tired of screaming and had settled into a sort of low, continuous, exhausted whimper, which he found he could work over the top of, the way you work over the top of a bad engine. She took the 4 credits. She took the broth, she took the tea. She turned and unfolded herself back into that long, strange walk and went down the concourse, and the concourse curved, and she was gone, and the note went with her, sliding away down through his ribs and out through his boots, and the pressure lifted, and Emil Tors let go of the counter. He got about 2 steps. Then his legs stopped participating and he sat down hard on the deck behind the counter in the grease and the condenser drip and shook. Not a little, comprehensively, head to foot for a long time, teeth clacking, hands jumping in his lap like landed fish. He laughed once, and the laugh came out wrong, wet and high, and he put his head back against the cabinet and breathed. When he could stand, he stood. The 3 dockhands had come out of their doorway. They were staring at him from 30 meters away like he had walked out of a fire. "You're insane," one of them called. Emil wiped his face with the back of his wrist and found that his wrist was burned. "She wanted soup," he said. He looked her up, because he was 19, and because his hands would not stop moving, and because the alternative was thinking about how completely his own body had betrayed him. Vaskir, homeworld Vaskir, a heavy world with a thick atmosphere and long nights, which was probably not a coincidence. 200,000 of them left, scattered across 70 systems, no consolidated territory, no navy, no seat at any table. And under the biology heading, in the flat, neutral prose of a public registry that had clearly been written by someone who had never stood 2 meters from one. Vaskir possess a specialized resonating structure in the throat and upper thorax. In their ancestral hunting behavior, this structure produced a subsonic broadcast that induced acute panic response in prey species. The effect is neurologically nonspecific and functions across an unusually broad range of nervous systems, including those of most sapients. The broadcast is autonomic. It is coupled to cardiac rhythm and cannot be voluntarily silenced. It scales with the emitter's own physiological arousal. Emil read that last sentence 3 times. It scales with the emitter's own physiological arousal. He sat on the edge of his bunk in the crew Warren on Ring 7, with the little screen glowing in his hands and the recyclers hissing behind the wall, and he thought about that. It got worse when she was afraid, which meant the terror was a feedback loop. She walks into a room. The room panics. The panic frightens her, because of course it does, because a room full of frightened people is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, and her fear makes the broadcast louder, and the louder broadcast makes the room panic harder, and around it goes, tightening, until someone gets hurt or she gets out. Every room, every day, for her entire life. Emil put the screen face down on his knee. He thought about the way she'd stopped an arm's length back from the counter. He thought about the credits set down and the hand withdrawn. He thought about "you should go," not a threat, not even a warning. An apology, said in the only grammar she had left. He did not sleep well, which was normal, and he dreamed about the Perpetua asterisk, which was also normal. He always dreamed the same 40 seconds of it. He was 7 years old, and there was a fire in the searing galleries of a generation hauler, and it was low and blue and almost silent, and the smoke came along the ceiling like a hand feeling its way. And there was a corridor. And in the corridor, 40 people were running, all of them the same direction at once, and they had stopped being people and had become one animal with one idea. In the dream, Emil never saw the fire. He only ever saw the backs of the running, and one woman on the deck who could not get up, and 30 faces that looked directly at her and went on. Human faces, everyone. He woke with his heart going and lay in the dark of a bunk on Ring 7 and thought, for the first time in years, about an old man named Ilario Bruna. The next night at 04:10, Emil Torres cleaned his counter and set out 2 saucers instead of 1, in case he sloshed again. She did not come. She did not come the night after that either. On the 3rd night at 04:40, when he had given up, the note came up through the deck plates and into his teeth, and every muscle in his back locked, and his heart went off like an alarm, and he put both hands flat on the counter and said, to nobody, in a voice that shook, "Okay, okay, okay." And then when she came around the curve of the concourse, slower this time, watching him, ready to turn around, Emil Torres straightened up and lifted a hand and said, "Ginger tea, salt broth, no noodles. Sit down, it's cold out there." She stopped. She stood in the middle of the empty concourse in the falling condenser rain, 200,000 of her kind left in the galaxy, and looked at a boy behind a counter who was visibly terrified and was pulling out a stool for her anyway. Then very slowly, as though she expected the floor to be a trick, she came and sat down. The stool was too low for her. She sat on it anyway, folded up like a surveyor's tripod, knees higher than the counter, and Emil found this so absurdly, unbearably ordinary that some knot in his chest loosened by a fraction. She still terrified him. That did not change. That would not change for a long time, and in a sense it never entirely changed at all. What changed was what he did about it. "I'm Emil," he said, sliding the tea across. He had this time filled it only 3/4 full, which was a small piece of engineering he was quietly proud of. She looked at the tea, she looked at him. "Sevrin," she said. "Sevrin," he repeated. "You are pronouncing the second syllable as if it has 1 voice," she said. "It has 2, but that is not your fault, and I have stopped minding." "Show me." She blinked. It was slow, and it went sideways, and it was the strangest thing he had ever watched a face do. "Yeah," he said. "How's it supposed to sound?" There was a pause long enough for the burner to tick twice. Then she said her own name properly, and the low voice under her voice bent around the high one, and the sound came out layered, like a chord. Emil tried it. It came out flat and wrong and thoroughly human. "Sevrin," he said, "that's the best I've got, sorry." "It was closer than most," she said, "because most do not attempt it." She drank the tea. Her mouth was not built like his, the lower jaw split, subtly, into 2 hinged halves, which was why she could not manage noodles, and she drank in a way that required the cup to be tipped high and held still, and she did it with a startling delicacy, and Emil looked away because he did not want her to feel watched, and then looked back because she caught him looking away and something in her went stiff. "You can look," she said. "I would rather be looked at than looked away from. That is a preference I have developed." So he looked. And that was the first night. There followed 6 weeks, though neither of them was counting at the time, and both of them counted later. She came at 04:10. It was, he learned, not an arbitrary hour. It was the 50-minute trough between the last of the night shift and the first of the morning, the only window in which Sable Reach's concourses were reliably empty, and she had built her life around it the way a plant builds itself around a crack of light. 20 years of 04. "Where do you go the rest of the time?" he asked on the 4th or 5th night. "Outside," said Sevrin. She was a hull walker, grade 4, which he did not understand until he asked around and found out that grade 4 meant plates and welds in a vacuum with a hard radiation gradient, and that on Sable Reach there were exactly 2 grade 4s, and one of them was 71 and mostly retired. She spent 51 hours a week on the exterior of the station. Alone, crawling across the skin of an 11-ring city with a torch and a tether, patching the micrometeor pits, replacing the sensor blisters, while inside the hull 400,000 people bought vegetables and argued about rent and did not think about her once. "It's a good job," he said carefully. "It is a job in which no one has to be near me," said Sevrin. She said it the way you'd read a duty roster, no self-pity in it at all. That was the worst part. He learned the geography of it slowly. There was, he discovered, an entire invisible architecture of avoidance built into Sable Reach, and once he saw it, he could not stop seeing it. Corridors on Ring 9 that nobody used and nobody could say why. A lift bank at Radial 8 with a queue at all hours except between 4 and 5 in the morning. A whole shortcut through the deep market, a good shortcut, a fast one that people mysteriously did not take, and if you asked them they'd say it was creepy down there. And it was not creepy down there. It was clean and well lit, and it happened to pass within 40 meters of the outer maintenance airlock that Sevrin used. Nobody had decided any of this. There was no rule, no sign, no policy. 400,000 people had simply, over 20 years, bent themselves slightly around one woman, the way a river bends around a stone, and had never once noticed they were bending, and would have been genuinely offended if you told them. Emil started using the shortcut through the deep market on purpose. It felt like the least he could do, and also like a very small flag planted in a very large piece of nothing. He also learned in pieces what she was afraid of. Because she was. He had guessed it from the registry entry. It scales with the emitter's own physiological arousal, but guessing was not the same as watching it happen. On the 11th night, a maintenance drone came around the concourse curve unexpectedly, low and fast and rattling, and Severin's whole body went rigid, quills lifting along her crest like a struck match, and the note in Emil's teeth went from a hum to an asterisk blade, and he was on the floor behind the counter before he knew he had moved. Just down, curled, both hands over his head. Animal. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. When he got up, cheeks burning, she was standing. She had put credits on the counter and was already turning away. "Hey," he said. "Hey, Sevrin, sit down. I frightened you." "Yeah, and she said, and the doubled voice cracked on it, which he had not known it could do. "And that is the entire content of my life, human, and you are making a game of it, and I would rather you did not." "It's not a game." "Then what is it?" Emil, who was still shaking, who could feel his own pulse in his eyeballs, picked up the fallen ladle for what felt like the 100th time. "It's a shift," he said. "I'm at work, you're a customer, sit down." She stared at him. She sat down. He made the broth. His hands were steady by the end of it, which was new and which he noticed, and which he did not mention. "You got scared," he said, setting it in front of her, "of the drone." Sevrin did not answer. "That's what did it right. It got loud when you got scared." "Yes. So you're scared a lot." "I am always scared," said Sevrin. The burner ticked. "Consider it," she said. "You are in a corridor. Everyone in that corridor is looking at you the way one looks at a fire in a wall. Some of them are running. Some of them are pressed against the bulkhead with their hands out. One of them at the back is very still and very quiet and has put his hand inside his coat, and you do not know what is in his coat, and you have perhaps 4 seconds to decide." She turned the cup a quarter turn on the counter with one curved finger. "Now do that every time you leave your quarters. Do it for 20 years. Do it knowing that your own fear is the thing making them worse. Tell me what your heart does." Emil said nothing. "I am the most frightening thing on this station," said Sevrin, "and I have never once been in a room where I was not the most frightened person in it." Her name in full was Sevrin Khal, of the line of Khal of the Vaskir diaspora, and she was about 43 in human years, though the Vaskir aged strangely, and she said the number meant nothing. She had a sister on a station 11 jumps away, whom she wrote to and did not visit. She liked ginger because it was the only flavor she had ever encountered that she could taste at full strength. Vaskir palates were dull, evolutionarily uninterested in food, and most of what humans ate registered to her as texture and warmth and nothing else. Ginger got through. Ginger was, she said, the single best thing about the human species, and she said it deadpan, and Emil laughed so hard he had to put down the pot. She had opinions about welding, strong ones, wrong ones in Emil's uninformed view but strongly held. She did not ever ask him why he stayed. He noticed that. It took him a while, but he noticed it. She never asked. She talked about welds and her sister and the third ring's terrible atmosphere balance and the idiocy of the harbor master's new docking schedule. And she never once said why are you not afraid of me, or why do you not leave? And eventually, Emil understood that it was because she did not want to hear the answer. Because there were only two possible answers, in her experience. The first was pity. And the second was that he was working up to something, and she had met that one before too. There was a night, week 4 maybe, when he told her about the Perpetua asterisk. He hadn't planned to. It came sideways out of a conversation about nothing, and then it was out, the blue fire and the low smoke and the corridor and the sound the crowd made, and Josepha Ng Cube going down under it, and 30 adults looking at her and going on. Sevrin listened without moving. I was 7, Emil said, and I remember thinking very clearly the way kids think, like it was a rule I just discovered, oh, so that's what people are. And then Ilario, he wiped the same clean spot on the counter, this old man, bad lungs. He came the wrong way up the corridor against all of them, shoving people, and he got down on the floor next to her, and he couldn't lift the strut, so he just talked to her. For 19 minutes. About tomatoes. Tomatoes. Tomatoes, his sister, office gossip, whatever came out of his head. Emil shrugged. She'd been screaming. She stopped screaming and started arguing with him about the hydroponics rotation. And then the suppression came on and they both lived. Sevrin was very still. So that's the thing, Emil said. That's the thing I've got, I guess. I've seen the worst face. And it wasn't, he gestured vaguely at all of her, the plates and the quills and the 4-jointed arms and the eyes like lamps. It didn't look like this. It looked exactly like me. It had my face on it, 30 of my face. He stopped, embarrassed. That's not a good answer, he said. Sorry you didn't ask. No, said Sevrin, I did not ask. She looked into her cup for a long moment. You're Ilario, she said. What did he say to you, afterward? There is always an afterward and there is always a sentence. Emil grinned, surprised. Running is a thing you do with your legs, he said. Staying is a thing you do with your mouth. You just keep talking. The doubled voice made a sound that had no equivalent in any language he knew. He was wrong, said Sevrin. Yeah. For you he was correct, for me he was wrong. She set the cup down. For me the mouth is the problem. Word got around. Sable Reach was 400,000 people, which sounds like a lot until you understand that it is really about 600 people who talk and everybody else. And by week 5, the 600 were talking about the kid at Marisol's who served the Vaskir. Some of it was admiration, of the useless kind. Some of it was the grinning, ghoulish interest people take in a man who has taken up a dangerous hobby. Some of it was uglier. A man Emil had never seen before leaned on the counter at midnight and said, conversationally, "You know what she is, right? A welder. She's a *fearcaster* kid." "That's a thing her body does," said Emil. "My body does things too. Nobody's writing me up for it. That thing put a man in medical on ring 9 8 years ago." "Did she touch him?" The man's mouth opened and shut. "He ran *, he admitted grudgingly, "went off a catwalk." "So she didn't put him in medical," Emil said. "The catwalk did." He said it easily, the way you say a thing you've already thought out. And afterward he stood at the burner for a long time with his ears ringing and his hands not quite steady, because he had just realized what he'd become. And what he'd become was a person with a *position*, and having a position about something in a station, This size is how you get hurt. Halfway through the 6th week, at 04:10, she brought him something. She set it on the counter and stepped back, the way she always did. It was a small flat thing wrapped in ration foil, and when he opened it, it was a piece of hull plate, a palm-sized offcut, sanded on all edges so it could not cut, polished to a soft gray mirror, and welded into its surface in a fine bright seam of a different alloy was a shape. It took him a second. It was a tomato. It was a terrible tomato. It was, structurally, a circle with a hat. Emil stared at it. "It is a bad likeness," said Sevrin defensively. "I have never seen one." His throat had done something inconvenient. "It's really bad, yeah. I am an excellent welder." "You're an excellent welder who's never seen a tomato." "That is what I said." Emil turned the plate over in his hands. On the back, scratched small, were 2 lines of Vaskir script, and under them, in careful blocky human letters that must have taken her an hour. "For the nuisance." He put it in his jacket pocket, where it stayed for the rest of his life, and he did not trust his voice for about 30 seconds, and Sevrin Khal drank her ginger tea, and had the enormous good manners to look at the ceiling. He asked her once what her sister did. "She teaches," said Sevrin. "Children, Vaskir children, on a Vaskir station. There are perhaps 900 of us there. It is the largest gathering left. It is the only place in the galaxy where a room does not empty when she walks into it. Why don't you go?" Sevrin turned her cup a quarter turn. "Because I would have to leave here," she said, "and I have not earned the right to leave here." "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "that this is where it happened." And Emil, who was 19 and not stupid, heard the shape of the thing in the dark and did not reach for it. He put a hand out toward the tea and pulled it back and said nothing at all, which Ilario Bruna would have told him was a mistake, and which was, in fact, exactly right. She would tell him. She would tell him in 11 days, in a stairwell, with a notice of removal in her hand and a crowd screaming 3 decks below. The incident happened on a 4th day, at 11 in the morning, in the Ring 6 market, and it happened because of a broken water main. That was the part nobody remembered afterward. A junction had blown on Radio 4, which meant that the maintenance staff who normally drew their water there had to draw it somewhere else, and somewhere else was the Ring 6 market, and the Ring 6 market at 11 in the morning was 4,000 people thick. Sevrin Khal needed 11 liters of water for a hull suit's coolant loop. She stood in the outer corridor for 11 minutes, watching the crowd through the archway, and then she went in, because the alternative was to skip a shift, and she had never in 20 years skipped a shift. She kept to the wall. She went slowly. She held her hands in front of her, open, empty, which was a thing she had worked out years ago and which had never once helped. She got 40 meters. A woman turned around with a basket of fruit and found herself looking up, from a distance of 2 meters, at a Vaskir. She screamed. That was all it took. Emil was not there. He heard it the way everybody hears these things, as a rumor, then an alarm, then a stampede of half-truths that arrived faster than the facts. But the shape of it was this. The woman screamed, and Severin's heart jumped, and the broadcast jumped with it, and 80 people in a 20-meter radius went from browsing to fleeing between one breath and the next. And the 80 told the next 200, without words, in the only language a crowd speaks, and the 200 told the rest. The market emptied in 90 seconds, 4,000 people through 6 archways. It emptied like a bathtub, which is to say, not evenly. Sevrin stood still. She had learned to stand still. Standing still was the only thing she had. She put her back against a stall post and closed her eyes and stood there in the middle of it and did not move a muscle for the full 90 seconds, while a market screamed and stampeded around her, and every second of it drove her own pulse higher, and every point of pulse made the note louder, and there was not one single thing in the universe she could do about it. A boy named Teodor Vaskir, 9 years old, went down in the crush at the east archway and came up with a broken arm. That was all. That was the entire casualty list, one broken arm, plus a great deal of ruined fruit and a fractured stall frame and a woman's dislocated finger, and 4,000 people who would tell the story for the rest of their lives. But the arm belonged to a child, and the child had a mother, and the mother had a voice, and Sable Reach had spent 20 years politely not looking at the thing in its basement. And now, the thing had cost a child an arm, and something that had been building for 2 decades finally, gratefully, broke. The notice went up 4 days later. Order of the Harbor Master, Sable Reach. In the matter of resident Sevrin Khal, Vaskir, Grade 4 Exterior Technician, Berth 12, Outer Ring, the above-named resident is hereby served notice of removal, with 30 standard days to arrange transit. This finding implies no criminal fault. The office notes the resident's exemplary service record and regrets the necessity of this order. The office finds that the resident's continued presence within the pressurized volume of the station constitutes an unacceptable and irreducible hazard to public safety. Signed Q. IDRIS Harbor Master. It was pushed to every screen on the station, and Emil read it standing in the queue at the ration bank with his ears roaring, and he read the last paragraph 3 times, and what he kept catching on was the word irreducible asterisk. Not asterisk dangerous asterisk, not criminal asterisk, not hostile asterisk. Irreducible. We looked at the problem, and we could not find a way to make you smaller. He found her in the stairwell of the outer ring at 02 in the morning, sitting on the landing between decks with the notice in her hand, and he knew he was going to find her there, and he made himself climb the stairs anyway, because there is a kind of courage that is only ever about legs. The note hit him at the 4th landing. He kept going, it got worse. It was, he thought dimly, the worst it had ever been, worse than the first night, worse than the drone, because she was not startled, she was not surprised. She was asterisk in it asterisk, sitting in it, marinating in it, and the broadcast coming off her was not a spike but a long, unbroken howl of a thing. And by the 6th landing, his hands were shaking too hard to grip the rail, and he was going up by leaning on the wall. He came around the last turn, and she was there, folded up on the step, all those extra joints making her look like something dropped. She did not look up. Go away, Emil. He sat down on the step below her. It took him 2 tries, because his knees were not being cooperative. Can't, he said, breathing hard. I'm on my break. Go asterisk away. Nope. You are shaking so violently that I can hear your teeth. Yeah, well. He put his back against the wall and his hands on his knees and pressed down until they stopped jumping. Ilario had bad lungs. Sevrin made a sound. He couldn't classify it. They sat. Somewhere far below, the station hummed. Water moved in a pipe. The lamps in the stairwell were the cheap kind, and one of them was failing, and it clicked, softly, over and over, like a small, patient animal. 30 days, she said. We'll fight it. There is nothing to fight. She turned the notice over in her hands. They are not wrong, Emil. That is the thing you have not understood. They are not asterisk wrong asterisk. A child's arm broke. It broke because I wanted water. If I had gone in a day later, or an hour later, or if I had simply gone without, she stopped. There is no argument I can make. The only argument is I should not be near people, and I have been making that argument to myself since I was 11 years old, and now the harbor master has finally agreed with me, and I find I do not have the strength to say she is mistaken. Sevrin. They will send me to Kithra, she said. The Vaskir station. My sister is there. It is the asterisk correct outcome asterisk, do you understand? It is what everyone has been quietly wishing for 20 years, and now it will happen, and it is humane, and everyone will feel good, and no one will ever have to look at me again. The failing lamp clicked. Then why are you sitting in a stairwell at 2 in the morning? Emil said. And Sevrin Khal turned and looked at him, and the amber eyes were terrible, and the broadcast came off her like a wave off a wall. And Emil Tor's entire body screamed at him to get up and go down those stairs and never come back, and he sat exactly where he was. Because I have not paid, she said. She told him then, in a stairwell on a landing with a bad lamp clicking. 19 years ago, she said, there was a station in the Rill Gate system, a refinery platform, 4,000 workers. I was 24 years old and I was a hull walker there as I am here, because it is the only work my kind can reliably get, and I was good at it, and I was proud, and I was, she paused, hunting the word hopeful asterisk. I still had that. Emil said nothing. There was a structural failure in the lower habitat. Not an explosion. A sag. A long, slow buckling of the spine over 11 hours, and the lower habitat began to separate from the core, and the corridors began to close, and 800 people were in there, and the internal lifts failed, and the only route out for the last of them was the exterior. You were the one who could go outside, Emil said. I was the only one who could go outside, said Sevrin. I was rated, I had the suit, I knew the plate, I knew every seam of that hull the way you know your own hands. She looked at the notice. I cut through into Gallery 9 at hour 6, 33 people alive in there, emergency lamps, cold, air going bad. And I came through the plate with a torch in my hand and a rescue line behind me, and the way out was 40 meters behind me, straight and clear and safe. Emil had stopped breathing. I opened my mouth to tell them the way, said Sevrin, and they ran. The lamp clicked. They ran into the station asterisk, she said, away from the hole in the wall, away from the light. Away from the woman with the rescue line, because the woman with the rescue line was the worst thing they had ever seen, and every nerve in their bodies told them so, and they went. They went asterisk deeper asterisk Emil, into the part that was closing, and I went after them, and going after them made it worse because I was afraid, and my fear is a loudspeaker, and the harder I chased them, the harder they ran. She stopped. I caught 4, she said. I carried 4 out through the plate. 2 of them fought me the entire way. One of them broke his own wrist trying to get out of my arms in vacuum in a rescue bag, 40 meters from safety. Sevrin. 29, she said. The gallery closed at hour 8. There were 29 people in it. Emil's eyes had filled. He didn't wipe them. Do you understand now? Sevrin said. There was a door. I was the door. And I stood in it with my arms open, and I killed 29 people by asterisk existing in the doorway asterisk. Her voice, both of it, was flat and calm and absolutely level. They gave me a commendation. There was a ceremony. Nobody attended because it was held in a room, and I was in the room. The lamp clicked. And so I came here, she said. And I took the outside work, and I learned the empty hours, and I have not been within 10 meters of a stranger in 19 years, and every single day of it has been the correct decision, and every single day of it has been. She stopped. Emil waited. Very long, said Sevrin Khal. He tried to say something. He was 19. What he had was insufficient. It wasn't you, he said. It was your asterisk body. It was a asterisk signal asterisk. It's like blaming somebody for their shadow. 29 people, said Sevrin, were killed by my shadow. That's not. Do not, she said, tell me it was not my fault. I have had 19 years and better arguments than yours. It was not my fault. It is also asterisk true that they would all be alive if I had not gone in. Both of these are true. That is the shape of the thing, Emil, and it does not resolve, and I have stopped waiting for it to. She stood up. She stood up, and she was suddenly enormous in that stairwell, filling it. her crest brushing the deck above, and the note went up with her, and Emil's vision went gray at the edges, and his body made him stand, made him press his back into the wall, made his hands come up. And she saw it. Of course she saw it. She had spent 43 years watching exactly that happen to exactly that face. There, she said softly, there it is. Sevrin, you are terrified of me. Yes, said Emil. You have always been terrified of me. Yes, said Emil. Obviously, every single time from the first second. What did you think? And something broke in her face. Something he could not name and never fully understood, but he saw it go, and what came after it was not rage. It was worse than rage. It was a kind of hunger so old and so starved that it had gone quiet, and it came up out of her all at once, and she took one step down toward him, and she said, "Every species runs from me." Emil pressed himself against the wall. "Every species," she said. "Every one, Kes, Tavani, Ordo, humans. The machines on Kithra had to be recoded because the biometric doors read my approach as a hostile boarding. 43 years on 9 stations, and I have watched every living thing I have ever met turn and go, and I have never once in my life had to ask anyone to leave a room, because the room leaves asterisk." Her hands were shaking. He could see it, those long four-jointed hands shaking. "So why don't you?" said Sevrin Khal, and the doubled voice broke clean in half. "Why don't asterisk you? You are afraid, you are as afraid as any of them, you are more afraid than most. I can asterisk hear your heart from here, so why do you asterisk stay? What is asterisk wrong with you?" The lamp clicked. Emil Tors, with his back against a stairwell wall with his whole body howling, looked up at her and said the truest thing he had, which was not enough, and he knew it was not enough even as it left him. "Because you said please," he said. Sevrin stared at him. "The first night," he said, "at the counter. You said ginger tea large, and then you said please, and nobody who's about to do something to you says please asterisk. That is a asterisk joke asterisk." "It's not a joke." "It is a joke asterisk," said Sevrin, "and it is a asterisk kindness, and I would rather you had hit me." "Sevrin, you are a asterisk good boy asterisk," she said, and it came out like something thrown. "And you have decided that I am your asterisk project asterisk, and you will be very brave at me for 30 days, and then I will get on a ship, and you will feel that you did a fine thing, and you will tell it in bars for the rest of your life, and I will be a asterisk story you told, and I have been a story a great many times, Emil, and I would like just once to not be one." "That's not. Go away. No. Go away." And she let it out. He never knew whether she did it on purpose. He asked her, years later, and she said she didn't know either, and he believed her. But the note came off her like a wall coming down. It came up through the deck and through his spine and into the roots of his teeth and behind his eyes and into the wet animal center of him where language does not go. And the last shred of Emil Tors that was making decisions was simply asterisk deleted asterisk. And his legs did what 19 years of evolution and 100,000 generations before that had built them to do. He ran. He got 4 flights down before he stopped. He stood on the landing with his hands on his knees, sobbing for breath, shaking so hard he could not straighten, and above him, 6 flights up in a stairwell with a failing lamp, he heard nothing at all. He had run. Everyone runs. Emil Tors stood in the dark and understood with a terrible clarity that this was the moment, that this exact moment on this exact landing, 4 flights down, was where 29 people had turned around and gone deeper into the dark, and he understood that she was sitting up there right now, folding this into the pile with all the others, filing it, closing it, writing of course across it in her mind. He straightened up. His legs would not carry him back up those stairs. He tried, they wouldn't. He got 2 steps and his body simply refused, revolted, would not. and he stood there and swore at his own knees like a lunatic. So he did the other thing. He put his hands on the rail, and he tipped his head back into the dark of the stairwell, and he shouted. Her name was HFY. The stairwell rang. SHE was pinned under a strut and 30 people went around her, he shouted. And one old man came back and held her hand and talked about tomatoes for 19 minutes, and he didn't do it because he wasn't scared, SCVRIN. He was 71 and he couldn't breathe and he was terrified. Silence. Running's a thing you do with your legs, Emil shouted and his voice cracked and he did not care. And my legs ran, fine, THEY ran, they're cowards. I'm still here. The lamps clicked. 6 flights up, nothing moved. Emil Tors sat down on the stairs in the dark and waited, and she did not come down, and after 2 hours he went to work, and he opened the counter, and at 04:10 he set out a cup of ginger tea and a bowl of salt broth with no noodles. Nobody came for it. He set it out the next night too. And the next. He did it for 8 nights, and every night he poured it out at 6, and on the 9th night the alarms went off across the whole of Sable Reach, and Ring 4 began to die. It began with a docking clamp. A bulk hauler called the Cormorant Bell 90,000 tons, came in on Ring 4's outer face with a fault in her attitude package that 3 separate inspectors had signed off on. She came in 11 degrees off axis at 4 times the approved closing rate, and the clamps caught her, and the clamps were rated for exactly this, and the clamps held. The docking collar did not. The collar tore out of the Ring's outer skin in a strip 40 meters long, and it took the coolant gallery behind it, and when the gallery opened to vacuum, the emergency system did what emergency systems do. It isolated everything. Doors came down all over Ring 4, big ones, fast ones, the kind that are designed not to care what is standing in them. And in the deep market, 110 meters below the breach, the wide, clean, well-lit arcade that Emil Tors had taken to walking through on purpose, because nobody else would, 31 people found themselves sealed in a box. The lifts were dead. The stairwells were behind blast doors that would not open, because the pressure differential on the far side was wrong, and the doors were not going to be argued with. The market's own emergency hatch led up into the coolant gallery, which was now a hole in the side of the station. The market had air, about 5 hours of it, less, as 31 frightened people burned through it faster than the models said they would. It had lights. It had, absurdly, water and food because it was a market. What it did not have was a way out. Emil heard the alarm at his counter, and he heard the station-wide within 4 minutes, and by the 7th minute he was running, and he was not running away. The deep market's main gallery entrance was on Ring 4, Radial 2, and by the time he got there, the corridor outside was already full, station response in orange, harbor master's people in gray, a knot of relatives, a stack of cutting gear that everybody was looking at and nobody was using. He got close enough to hear. Can't cut it, the differential's 40 kPa. You cut that door and you dump the market. So equalize it. With what? The gallery's open to space. The whole feed line is gone. Harbor Master Quen Idris was a small square woman of about 60 with gray hair cut like a helmet and a voice like a dropped tool, and she stood in the middle of it with a schematic on a slate, and she was not panicking. And Emil, who had never in his life spoken to a station official, watched her for about 90 seconds and understood that she was going to lose. Exterior, she said. Somebody groaned. Exterior asterisk, she said again. There's an outer maintenance airlock. Deep market service hatch D12, it's on the skin. It's 150 meters of hull walk from the nearest pressurized lock, and then you're in the market, and then you bring them out the same way in bags in vacuum. 6 at a time. 4 trips. Across the asterisk skin, Under a breached coolant gallery, someone said. That's a radiation gradient and live venting. That's grade 4. Yes, said Idris. There was a silence in that corridor. It went on a little too long. Velen's on Kethro down, said someone quietly. 11 days out. Yes, said Idris. And then everybody in that corridor, all at once, without a single word being spoken, looked at absolutely nothing, very hard. Emil Tors pushed through to the front. You've got a grade 4, he said. Harbormaster Quen Idris looked up at him from her slate. You've got a grade 4 on this station right now, Emil said, and his voice was doing something strange and he let it. And you served her with a removal notice 8 days ago, and she's in berth 12 on the outer ring, and you all know exactly who I'm talking about, and you have all been standing here for 20 minutes very carefully not saying her name. Nobody moved. Say her name asterisk, Emil said. Quen Idris held his eyes for a long moment. Then she looked back down at her slate, and something in her jaw moved. Sevrin Khal, she said, get her. You can't put a asterisk Vaskir in there, someone said. You put her in that market, you've got 31 people in a sealed box, and you're going to put a asterisk Fearcaster in with them. They'll tear themselves apart, They will run, said Emil. He said it very quietly, and the whole corridor heard it. They'll run, he said. That's what happens. She'll come through that hatch to save them, and they'll run away from her, and there's nowhere to run to, and they'll hurt each other, and she'll. He stopped. He looked at the stack of cutting gear that nobody was using. Get me a hull suit, said Emil Tors. I'm going with her. She was in her berth. She opened the door on the third knock and looked down at him and said nothing. The note came off her low and steady, and he stood in it, and he did not move. Deep market, he said. 31 people sealed, 5 hours. The only way in is the skin. Severin's face did not change. No, she said. She closed the door. Emil put his boot in it. It was a stupid thing to do. Her door weighed 80 kilos, and she could have taken his foot off at the ankle without noticing, and instead she stopped, because she was who she was, and the door hung there. 31, he said. I know what the number will be, said Sevrin through the gap. Do you think I do not know what the number will be? It will be asterisk 4. Sevrin. I will cut the hatch, she said, and I will come through into a lit room with 31 people in it and a rescue line behind me, and they will run, and there is asterisk nowhere in that market to run to asterisk, and they will pile against the far wall like asterisk grain, and I will pull 4 of them out, and the rest will be. She stopped. Her voice was flat. I have done this. I know exactly how it goes. I know the asterisk sounds. They can't run this time, Emil said. It's a sealed box. There's no deeper. There's no dark to disappear down. There's one room and one hole in the wall, and the hole in the wall is asterisk U. That is asterisk worse asterisk, said Sevrin. That is asterisk infinitely asterisk worse. They will not run asterisk away. They will run at asterisk the walls, and they will keep running at the walls, and I will stand in that room and make them do it with my asterisk heart asterisk. And there it was, the whole thing, the whole 19 years in one sentence said through a gap in a door. Emil leaned his forehead against the doorframe. Then don't be afraid, he said. Sevrin laughed. It was the doubled click, and there was nothing in it at all. Yes, she said. Thank you, I had not tried that. I mean it. Emil. It scales with your asterisk arousal, he said. That's what the registry says. It's not a weapon you fire, it's a asterisk thermometer asterisk. It's your heart rate. If you're calm, it's a hum. It's a asterisk hum asterisk, Sevrin. I've asterisk felt asterisk it. That night you told me about Ginger, you were laughing at me, and it was asterisk nothing. It was like standing near a big engine. I worked through it. I made soup. He heard her breathing on the other side of the door. So the whole thing, Emil said, The whole 20 years comes down to one question, and the question is, who keeps you calm? Silence. And the answer's always been asterisk, nobody asterisk, he said. Because everybody who could keep you calm runs away because you're scary, because you're scared, because you're alone. And around and around and around. 19 years. The door opened. She stood in it. You cannot come, she said. It is vacuum, it is a hard gradient. You are a asterisk cook asterisk. I'm a nuisance, said Emil. Idris is getting me a suit. You will asterisk die out there. Then walk slow, said Emil Tours. They put him in a hull suit that did not fit and gave him 90 seconds of instruction and a tether and a helmet with a cracked chin seal that they taped. And Quen Idris looked him in the eye through the faceplate and said, You do exactly what she says out there. Exactly. Every word. Yes, ma'am. And Tours. The harbormaster's square face was unreadable. If this works. It's going to work. If this works, I want you to remember that I signed that notice. Yes, ma'am, said Emil and meant it, and she nodded once and turned away. The outside of Sable Reach was the most beautiful and the most horrible thing Emil Tours had ever seen. Osric hung over them enormous, a slow storm-scarred wall of bruise and rust and dull violet, filling half the sky, and the station's hull ran away beneath his boots in a curve of gray plate and frost and lamp spill. And beyond it there was simply the black, and none of it cared about him at all. He was, for about 4 seconds, so frightened that he could not think. Then a 4-jointed hand clipped his tether to a line, and the doubled voice came into his helmet, and it was very calm, and it said, Feet flat, do not look at the planet, do not look at the stars, look at the plate. There is only the plate. There's only the plate, Emil repeated. Say it again. There's only the plate. Good, now walk. It took them 51 minutes to cross 150 meters. She went ahead of him and she went slow, testing every mag step, and where the coolant gallery had opened above them she took him wide, out along the ring's lower curve, because there was a plume up there that he could not see and she could, a slow white breath of vented coolant crystallizing into a fan of ice that would have stripped the plating off his suit like paper. She talked the whole way, not because she was talkative, because she had worked out somewhere in the first 10 meters that if she stopped talking, Emil's breathing went wrong. That seam, she said. Do you see it? That is my work 4 years ago. It's a good weld. It is an asterisk, excellent asterisk weld. Step. There is a sensor blister at your right. Do not touch it. It is charged. Step. How much further? Do not ask that question. Step. He stepped. Osric hung over him like judgment. Somewhere under his boots, 31 people were breathing the same air for the 4th hour. Sevrin, he said. Step. Sevrin, I need to tell you the plan. You have a plan. I have a plan. You are a cook, said Sevrin Khal, and you have a plan. Yeah. A pause, 2 steps. The tether hissed against the plate. Tell me, she said. So he told her. You don't go in, said Emil. I go in. That is not. Listen, listen. You cut the hatch and you stay asterisk outside it, out here in the dark, out of line of sight, and I go in alone. 31 people see a human boy in a bad suit come through the wall, and what they feel is relief asterisk. Just relief. And then I've got, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3, before you have to come in because you're the only one who can rig the bags and the line and get them across the skin. And in those 3 minutes. In those 3 minutes, said Emil, I tell them about the weather. The asterisk weather asterisk. They're about to feel the worst fear of their lives, he said, and they're going to think it's theirs asterisk. That's the trap. That's the thing that killed those 29 people, Sevrin, not the fear, the asterisk ownership of it. They felt terror and they believed it because why wouldn't you? It's coming from inside your own chest. He stepped. The plate was very cold through his boots. So I tell them first, he said, before they feel it. I tell them, in about 90 seconds a woman is going to come through that hole in the wall and she is going to save your life, and when she does, your body is going to lie to you. It's going to tell you she's a monster. It's going to tell you to run. That feeling is not yours. It's not about her and it's not about you. It's weather. It's rain. You stand in it and you get wet and you keep walking. Silence in the helmet, long. That will not work, said Sevrin. It works on me, said Emil Tors. You are. I'm nothing, he said. That's the point. I'm a 19-year-old cook with a bad haircut. I'm not brave, Sevrin. I have never in my whole life been brave. I ran down 4 flights of stairs from you 8 days ago and I cried about it. The only thing I've ever done is notice . Somebody told me once the fear's in the legs, and you can just not use the legs. You can stand there being terrified and doing your job . It's not heroic. It's the least impressive thing a person can do. That's why it works. That's why anybody can do it. Emil. He stopped. There is a second half of the plan, said Sevrin quietly. Say the second half. He was quiet for 4 steps. The second half, he said, is that I stay next to you. Yes. The whole time, right next to you, and I keep talking, because they'll still be afraid and you'll hear them being afraid, and that'll frighten you . And if you get frightened the whole thing comes apart in about 6 seconds. He swallowed. So somebody stands next to you and keeps you calm. Somebody stands there and talks to you about tomatoes until it's over. The white plume vented, far above, silent. That is Hilario's job, said Sevrin. Yeah. You are proposing to be my Hilario. I'm proposing, said Emil, that in 19 years not one single person has ever once tried to calm you down. They only ever tried to calm themselves down by getting away from you. Nobody ever turned around and looked at the scariest thing in the room and said, hey, are you okay? Are you all right? Breathe. The doubled voice did not answer. They came in the black in the shadow of a dead world, to a plate marked D12, frosted over, unopened in 11 years. Sevrin Khal knelt on the skin of Sable Reach and put her torch against it. Emil Tors, she said. Yeah. If they run, she said, you will get out of the way. You will not stand between me and a crowd. Say it. Yeah. Say it. I'll get out of the way, lied Emil Tors. And the torch lit. The plate came away in a slow, silent square, and Emil went through it into light. He came down 4 meters on a line into the back of a homeware stall and landed badly and got up, and the noise of the deep market hit him, and the noise was not screaming. It was worse than screaming. It was that low murmuring hum a crowd makes when it has been afraid for a long time and has started to get organized about it, which is the sound a crowd makes right before it does something terrible. They came at him, all of them at once in a wave, and for a half-second Emil thought this is what she sees. This is what it looks like from her side, and then they were on him, hands on his suit, on his helmet ring, voices layered and desperate. Is it open? How many? Can we get out, my daughter? Is it open? Hey, Emil shouted. They kept coming. He got his helmet off and threw it, and it clattered across the deck, and the sound of it did something. The crowd flinched, checked itself. And in that half-second, Emil got up on a display counter, boots on the glass, and stood over them. My name is Emiltors, he shouted. I work ATMARISOLS ring 6. They stared at him. He realized, absolutely no authority of any kind. He was 19, in a suit 2 sizes too big, and his hair was terrible. There's a way out, he said, and his voice cracked and he let it. It's through that hole. It goes across the outside of the station. It's 150 meters, and you'll all go in rescue bags, 6 at a time, and it's going to take an hour, and everybody here is going home. Everybody. All 31 of you." The sound the crowd made then was not one he ever forgot. "But I have to tell you something first," said Emil, "and I need you to listen to me very carefully asterisk, and I need you to listen faster than you have ever listened to anything, because we've got about 90 seconds. He looked at them, 31 faces, a woman holding a child, 2 old men, a shop girl about his own age with mascara down to her jaw, a big dockhand with his fists clenched, breathing hard, already halfway to something. "In 90 seconds, said Emil Tors, "a Vaskir is going to come through that hole in the wall." The market moved. It moved like water. It went back from him half a step, all of it, one animal, and the murmur turned into something with edges, and the big dockhand said loudly, "No. Her name is Sevrin Khal," said Emil, "and she is the only grade 4 hull walker on the station, and she is the only reason there is a hole in that wall and without her every one of you dies in this room in about 4 hours. "You can't a woman said. "You can't put that thing in here, you can't, there's nowhere to." "I know," said Emil, "I know, listen to me." He crouched down on the counter, so he was not above them any more. "In about a minute," he said, "you are going to feel the worst fear of your life." They went quiet. "I mean it, worse than now, worse than the last 5 hours. It's going to come up through the floor and into your teeth and your chest, and it is going to be absolute. And it is going to tell you, with total certainty, in the oldest voice you have, that there is a monster in this room and you have to get away from it right now Somebody was crying, he kept going. "And here's the thing I need you to know before it happens," said Emil. "That feeling is not yours." He let that sit for 1 second. "It's a broadcast," he said. "It's a thing her body does that she cannot switch off, any more than you can switch off your own heartbeat. It's not aimed at you. She's not doing it to you. She's had it her whole life, and she hates it more than you ever will." He wiped his face. His hand came away wet and he didn't care. "It is weather. That's all. It's rain And in about 90 seconds it's going to start raining in here, and you are going to get soaked and you are going to want to run, and I am telling you now while you can still think." He pointed at the hole in the wall. "That the rain is not the danger. The rain is the rescue, and if you run from it, you will be running away from the only door." Silence. 19 years ago, said Emil, 33 people were in a room like this one, and she came through the wall to get them, and 29 of them ran. He looked at them. "Don't," he said, "please, that's it. That's the whole thing I came to say. Don't run. Stand in the rain and get wet and hold on to each other, and don't run. And every single one of you sleeps in your own bed tonight." The big dockhand said in a voice that shook, "And if we can't?" "You can't," said Emil. "None of you can, I can't. I've been standing next to her for 6 weeks and I'm scared every single time He got down off the counter. "That's not the job. The job isn't not being scared. The job is being scared and keeping your feet still That's all. That's a thing you can do. That is the most ordinary thing in the universe and it's the only thing that's going to work." And then he did the thing that saved them, though he did not know it at the time and never took credit for it afterward. He turned his back on the crowd and walked to the hole in the wall and stood under it and reached up and put his hand into the dark. "Sevrin," he called, "come on down, it's fine, they're good." She came through the wall. She came down the line slow, in a hull suit, helmet under one arm because Vaskir lungs did not need it in a pressurized room, and she was 2.5 meters of dark plate and quill and lamp glass amber, and she landed on the deck of the deep market with a sound like a dropped anchor. And the note came off her like a wave off a wall. The market screamed. Emil felt it go through him, and it was the worst it had ever been, worse than the stairwell, because she was terrified. Of course she was. She was standing in a sealed room in front of 31 strangers on the 9th day of the worst month of her life, and she was waiting for it to happen again. And his legs went, and his vision went gray, and his back hit the wall, and he heard the crowd behind him move, heard the thunder of it. Heard 31 people go back and back and back into the far corner of the market, and pile against the wall, exactly the way she had said they would, like grain. Sevrin Khal stood in the middle of the deep market with her arms open, and her eyes closed and did not move. And empties on his knees, with every animal in his blood howling go, crawled toward her. He got a hand on her boot, then her knee, then hauling himself up her leg like a man climbing a mast in a gale, her arm plate, and he got both hands on it and pressed his forehead against the cold hull suit fabric of her forearm, and he started talking. "Hey," he said, "hey, Sevrin, hi." Her body was rigid as a bulkhead. He could feel the resonance in it, humming through the plate, through his bones, through his skull. "It's fine," he said. It's fine, you're fine, listen to me. Nothing's happening, nobody's hurt. They're just against the wall, they're okay. They're standing up. Nobody's on the floor. Look, no, don't look, keep your eyes shut, it's better with them shut. Just listen to me, okay?" The note wavered. "Do you remember the tomato?" said Emil. Something in the arm under his hands twitched. "It was so bad, he said. His teeth were chattering so hard he could barely get the words out, and he got them out anyway. Sevrin, it was the worst tomato in the history of tomatoes. It was a circle with a hat asterisk. I've got it in my jacket. I take it everywhere. I showed it to my supervisor, and he said it was a jellyfish." The doubled voice made a sound, very small. "And I told him it was a tomato asterisk, and he said, 'Why does the tomato have a hat asterisk?' And I said, 'It's the leaves, Rufus. It's got leaves.'" And behind him, in the corner of the deep market, 31 people pressed against a wall with their hearts trying to break their ribs, heard a 19-year-old boy clinging to the arm of a monster, shaking so hard he could barely stand, arguing about the anatomy of a tomato. The note dropped. It dropped a little, just a little. The pressure behind Emil's eyes let go by one notch. He felt it. He felt it, and he almost sobbed with it, and he did not stop talking. "There you go," he said. "There you go, that's it, breathe. Whatever you do, whatever that is, whatever Vaskir breathing is, do it. Slow, you're okay. You're not going to hurt anybody. You've never hurt anybody. Sevrin, listen to me. You have never in your entire life hurt one single person, not one. You have been standing in doorways your whole life, holding them open." The note dropped again. And in the corner, the big dockhand, whose name was Val, who worked the ore cranes on Ring 2, who had 4 children and had spent the last 5 hours certain he would never see them, pushed himself off the wall. He stood up straight in the rain, and he was crying, and his legs were shaking, and he took one step forward. "It's weather," he shouted at nobody, at everybody, at himself. "It's just weather." And he took another step. They got them out in 4 trips. Sevrin rigged the line. Sevrin sealed the bags. Sevrin carried them, 2 at a time, across 150 meters of frozen hull under a bruise-colored sky, 6 people a trip, and each trip took 19 minutes, and on every single one of them Emil Tors walked beside her and talked. He talked about tomatoes. He talked about the burner at Marisol's that ran too hot on one side. He talked about Ilario Bruna and Josepha N-Cube and the hydroponics rotation, and which assistant manager was an idiot and why. He talked complete nonsense for 1 hour and 16 minutes without stopping, in a voice that shook the entire time, and Sevrin Khal's heart stayed slow, and the note stayed a hum. The people in the bags could hear him, the human voice in their earpieces, babbling, cheerful and terrified and absolutely relentless. And afterward, when they were asked, almost all of them said the same thing. There was somebody talking, so I knew it was going to be all right. On the third trip, a woman named HFY woke up. She had been unconscious since the second hour, a fall, a bad one, a shelf, and she woke up in vacuum, in a rescue bag, in the arms of a Vaskir, with Osric filling the sky above her and the broadcast 3 centimeters from her spine. She screamed and she fought. She fought like an animal, and Severin's heart went off like a hammer, and the note came up so hard that Emil, 2 meters away, went down on the plate on both knees with his hands over his ears in a suit that could not be opened, and for 3 full seconds the whole thing hung on a thread over 110 meters of nothing. And Emil Tors got his forehead against the plate and screamed into his helmet mic. Sevrin, Sevrin, look at me. It's raining, that's all, it's raining, keep walking. Sevrin Khal kept walking. She kept walking with a screaming woman in her arms and a boy on his knees behind her, and her own heart trying to kill everyone she loved. And she did not drop her, and she did not stop, and she did not let go. 19 minutes later, HFY came through the airlock into a corridor full of orange suits and sat down on the deck and looked back at the closing hatch and said, to nobody in particular, "Who was carrying me?" 31. Emil counted them himself, in the corridor outside the lock, because he had to. Because there was a number in his head that he needed to beat, and he did not tell anyone what it was. 31 people out. 31 people standing, sitting, lying on the deck of a Ring 4 corridor, being handed water, crying, laughing, calling their families. To more than 29. He turned around to tell her. Sevrin Khal was sitting on the deck against the wall with her helmet beside her, and the corridor was full of people. The people she had carried, and their families, and station response, and half the harbormaster's office. And the note was coming off her in a low, steady, exhausted hum that had every hair on Emil's body standing on end. And nobody was running. Nobody was running. They stood there, 60, 70 people in a corridor in the rain, being rained on, with their hearts going like birds and their hands shaking and their bodies screaming at them. And they stood there, and they looked at her, and one by one they came closer. HFY got there first. He crossed the corridor with his legs visibly trembling and stood in front of her, and he could not stop shaking, and he did not go away, and he said, in a voice like a man in a high wind, "Ma'am, thank you." And then he stood there, just stood there, drenched in the weather, holding his ground, for about 11 seconds, which was the bravest thing HFY ever did, and he knew it for the rest of his life. Then a woman came, then another, then HFY, who could barely walk, on 2 people's shoulders, and who got right up to her and put a hand flat on Severin's arm plate and left it there. They came in 1s and 2s across that corridor with their whole nervous systems howling, and they stood in front of her and said thank you, and they stayed. Sevrin Khal looked up at them. And Emil, standing at the back with his helmet under his arm, watched 43 years come apart in a woman's face, and had to look away, and then made himself look back, because she had told him once that she would rather be looked at than looked away from. She found him afterward in the emptied-out corridor, at 04:10 in the morning, when everyone had gone. She sat down beside him on the deck. It took her a while, there were a lot of joints involved. They didn't say anything for a long time. 31, said Sevrin. Yeah, said Emil. To more than 29. Yeah. I noticed, she said, in the second trip, I found that I was counting. Emil rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. He was so tired he could feel his own bones. Emil, said Sevrin Khal. Oh. Every species runs from me, she said. He turned his head. She was not looking at him. She was looking down the long, empty curve of the corridor, at the lamps, at the wet grating, at the condenser drizzle falling through it and pooling on the deck. Every species, she said. Every one. For 43 years. And on the 9th day of the worst month of my life, A boy who is afraid of me, who is asterisk genuinely, measurably afraid of me asterisk, whose heart I can hear from 4 meters, crawled across a floor asterisk toward me on his hands and knees. She turned. The amber eyes were wet, which he had not known they could be. "Why don't you run?" she said. And this time Emil Tors had an answer. "I do," he said. Sevrin waited. "Every time," he said. "Every single time, Sevrin. From the first second I ever saw you. My heart runs, my hands run, my legs run. I ran down 4 flights of stairs from you, and I'd probably do it again if you shouted at me. I'm not brave. I'm not immune. There's nothing special about me. There's nothing special about humans. We're just," he laughed, exhausted, "we're just monkeys who get scared of shapes in the dark, same as everybody." He looked at his hands. They were still shaking. They had been shaking for 6 hours. "The only thing I ever figured out," said Emil, "is that the running and the going are 2 different things." The condensers dripped. "Your body runs," he said. "Fine, let it. It's going to anyway, it's not asking. But you, the you part, the part that's in there deciding things, you don't have to go with it. You can just stand there, terrified, absolutely useless, and stay." He shrugged. "That's it. That's the whole trick. It's not courage. Courage sounds like something you have to asterisk be. This is just a thing you asterisk do asterisk, and anybody can do it, and it's asterisk boring, and it works." Sevrin Khal said nothing. "And the other reason," said Emil, "is that the first night you stood an arm's length back from the counter so I'd have room to get away, and you put your money down instead of handing it to me so I wouldn't have to touch you, and you read a menu you already knew by heart to give me time to run, and then you said asterisk please asterisk." His voice went. "You were the most frightening thing I'd ever seen in my life," he said, "and you were standing in my shop being polite to me about it. And you'd been doing that for 20 years and not one single person had ever noticed." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "So I wasn't being brave, Sevrin," said Emil Tors. "I was being courteous asterisk. You were a customer. You said please. It would have been asterisk rude asterisk to run." The notice of removal was rescinded 11 days later, in a 2-line memo from the harbormaster's office that nobody read, because by then the harbormaster had done something considerably louder. Quen Idris created a job. It had never existed on Sable Reach before, and it existed now, and it had exactly 1 person in it. Chief Exterior Rescue, SKHAL. The badge was heavy and ugly and cheaply made, and she wore it every day for the next 30 years. It did not fix everything. This is the part people leave out. Corridors still emptied. Shopkeepers still brought their grills down. The 9-year-old with the broken arm, Teodor Vasquez, was frightened of her until he was 14, and then one day he wasn't and never fully explained why. Strangers off incoming ships turned white and bolted every week for the rest of her life, and Sevrin Khal learned to stand very still and let them go and not take it personally, which she was never entirely able to do. But the station changed the way stations change, which is to say slowly and stupidly and in the wrong order. Somebody put a sign at the mouth of the Deep Market shortcut. It was hand-lettered and unofficial, and the harbormaster's office took it down twice and then gave up, and it said, "IT's weather, keep walking." The crews on Ring 4 started saying it to each other as a joke, and then not as a joke. Dockhands used it during pressure drills. Mothers used it on children who wouldn't go to bed. 11 years later, Emil heard it on a station 4 jumps away, from a man who had never been to Sable Reach and had no idea what it meant, and he sat down in a corridor and laughed until he had to stop. And at Marisol's on Ring 6, under a sign that said Broth and Mercy, 24 HOURS. A counter that had 8 stools got a 9th one taller than the others, welded on site, free of charge, by an excellent welder. She still came at 0410. Habits are hard. But she was not alone at the counter anymore. Petras Val came most weeks and sat 2 stools down and never got any better at it. He shook the entire time, every time for years, and drank his tea anyway. Saul came. The shop girl with the mascara came and brought her sister, and her sister brought a friend, and the friend bolted the first time and came back the second, which Emil had learned was the only statistic that mattered. They sat there in the rain of the condensers, in the weather wet through, with their hearts going, and they did not go anywhere. And Sevrin Khal, chief of exterior rescue, sat on a stool that fit her at last and drank ginger tea and was looked at. Emil Tors put down a cup in front of her, 3/4 full, no slosh. He had gotten very good at it and leaned on the counter, and said the thing he said every night, which was not clever and was not brave and had never once been either. "Evening, Sevrin," he said. "What can I get you?"